Okay, so let's continue and let's move on to now chapter 2.1 in the textbook, which is all about linear algebra. And this should be a review based on the prerequisites for the course. So I'm going to go a little bit fast. I'm going to assume it's a review for you with some new notation. If it's not, that's okay. You can certainly spend some more time with this material and ask me after class or at office hours if you want to discuss this more or need additional references. But I'm assuming it's going to be a review in the sort of style of this lecture. So the key object that we'll have here are vectors. These are going to be n tuples of objects. And I'll write it as v with a bar over it for now, with components v1 through vn. In principle, a vector can have elements over any field, if you remember what a field is from a math course. If not, no worries. We're almost exclusively in this course going to work with the field of complex numbers. So think of all of these as complex numbers, and then the entire vector is an element of Cn, n tuples of complex numbers. You should know how to add vectors together. How do you do it element-wise, right? And you should know how to do scalar multiples of vectors. How do you do that? Also element-wise. Now, this is the mathematical notation that you're probably familiar with. In quantum information and quantum mechanics, we use a slightly different notation. We use Dirac notation. Instead of a bar over the symbol, I'm going to use a vertical line with a right-angled bracket. And whatever I put inside of that is our symbol, our indicator for what the vector is. Okay? So this is called a ket, K-E-T. This is the term I was using when I was saying ket 0 and ket 1. Why ket? Well, a ket is going to be for a column vector. So we are going to distinguish between column vectors and row vectors. So this being a column vector, kets will always indicate a column vector. We also have another notation in Dirac notation, a left-angled bracket and a vertical line with a symbol in the middle. This is known as a bra. And this is going to be defined as the conjugate transpose of the ket vector. So this is our bra. This dagger notation is also kind of unique to quantum. What it means is two things. It means first take the transpose of the vector. The transpose will take it from a column vector to a row vector. And then it also means on top of that, take the complex conjugate of each element. Okay? So numbers are complex numbers. Complex conjugate means flip the sign of the imaginary component. For example, we'll often use the notation psi, and I could have psi being a two-element complex vector, alpha, beta. In this case, the bra version of psi would be a row vector, alpha star, beta star. So why these funny names, bra and kets? In quantum information, quantum mechanics, we often have quantities that we want to compute that look something like this. A bra on the left, some operator in the middle, which will be a matrix, and then a ket on the right. And these are historically have been called brackets. So you want to compute the brackets. Dirac said, let's call this the bra and this the ket. So you can think about this as a bracket. There's a software package for quantum information, quantum computing, that's called BraCat now. we'll have the following notation for the 0 vector. It's just going to be 0. So this is going to be the n-element vector, which is all zeros. And why are we going to do this? Because we want to use ket 0 for something else and ket 1 for something else. So ket 0, which appeared in the Deutsch-Jose algorithm, is going to be the 2-element vector 1 and 0. Ket 1 is going to be the 2-element vector 0 and 1. We want to use these because we're going to think of and call these quantum versions of bits, which we shorten to qubits. And with bits, we use 0 or 1, so we want to use this notation for qubits as well. So always if you see ket 0, it means this, never the 0 vector. The 0 vector will always just be 0 in this course. After we have vectors, we want to talk about bases and linear independence. So this is chapter 2.1.1 of the textbook. And our first definition is of a spanning set. So a spanning set of vectors given a vector space, V1 through, say, Vn here, is a set of vectors such that for any vector v in this vector space, so of v, spanning set of a vector space v, it just means that I can represent any vector I want as a linear combination of these vectors. So for any vector v in this space, there exist coefficients, I'll use ai here, such that v can be written as a linear combination, sum over I going from 1 to n of ai vi. As an example, these two vectors are a spanning set for C2, a space of 2-element complex vectors. Okay? Now, this pretty much encapsulates the notion of a basis that we want. We just need to care about one technicality, essentially, which is that some of these could be redundant. So unfortunately, this takes a little more formality, but that's the intuition. So we have one more definition. So vectors v1 through vn are said to be linearly independent. Linearly independent, the title of this section. If and only if, looking at the equation a1 v1 plus an vn being equal to 0, this implies that all coefficients are 0. So if one of them were not 0, then it would be a 0 vector. We want to avoid the 0 vector in a basis. If two of them were non-zero, then that means that one could be written in terms of the other. In other words, it's a redundant vector in the set. We don't need it. So that leads us to our definition of a basis. A basis is a linearly independent spanning set. We will often use the notation dimension of a vector space V. Dimension of a vector space V is equal, is defined as, the number of basis elements, or the number of elements in any basis, and you can show that this will actually be unique. Now, all of quantum mechanics happens in a vector space, actually a Hilbert space, which we'll get to. if you take an actual physics course, a quantum mechanics course, usually you'll work in an infinite dimensional Hilbert space, infinite dimensional vector space. In this course, almost exclusively, we will work in a finite dimensional vector space. Okay? So just a note, if you're comparing to any friends that you have which are taking quantum mechanics, we will always be finite dimensional. The classic example of an infinite dimensional space is, think back to Fourier series, which I wrote down yesterday. I can write any function in terms of a Fourier series, but the summation is infinite. Right? I have to include all frequencies. So that would be an example of an infinite dimensional vector space. Any questions on this? Yes?
I haven't done Boolean algebra before, but what's the symbol that's after dimensional?
This symbol here, this is what I'll use for a definition. So it means that whatever is on the right is a placeholder for what's on the left. Yep. Not necessarily a linear algebra thing, just a mathematical notation that I'll use. Other questions? Okay, let's keep moving along to the next section, 2.1.2. This is on linear operators and matrices. So, a linear operator which I'll denote for now with the symbol A, going between two vector spaces V and W. So A inputs a vector in V, outputs a vector in W, is any map or function, if you will, which is linear. This is the linear in linear algebra in the following sense. A acting on a sum over I of AI VI is equal to sum over I AI with capital A acting on VI. So this is the linearity principle that we used in the analysis of the Deutsch-Jozsa algorithm, and of course is fundamental to all of linear algebra. That's sort of the abstract definition of a linear operator. And what we'll have is the next definition. A matrix is going to be a linear operator with respect to a basis. Okay? So let's see an example of this. Let's suppose that I define the following linear operator. A acting on ket 0 being equal to ket 1, and A acting on ket 1 being equal to ket 0. This is a definition of a linear operator. How would I write it as a matrix? Well, it's going to be basis dependent. So let's choose the basis for now, 0 and 1. And in the textbook, you'll see, and you may have seen in your linear algebra courses, we could write the input basis, the order of the input basis on the top, and the order of the output basis on the left. So in both cases, I want the order to be first the 0 vector and then the 1 vector. And then hopefully you remember from linear algebra, how do you write this in terms of a matrix? Well, it's what A does to the 0 states in the first column, in this order with the coefficients, and then it's what A does to the 1 states in the second column, in this order with these coefficients. So how would I do that here? I'm given the definition A acting on 0 is equal to 1. A acting on 0 is equal to 1. That means 0 times ket 0 plus 1 times ket 1. So 0 times ket 0 plus 1 times ket 1. First column of the matrix. Now I do the same thing for the second column. A acting on the 1 state is 1 times ket 0 plus 0 times ket 1. Does this make sense? Questions about this? let me give you the following exercise to try. So try this exercise. Write the same linear operator A in the following basis, which we'll see throughout the course as an important one. Plus and minus, very funny looking notation. Remember, I'm allowed to put anything in the ket that I want. Okay, it could be a plus sign, it could be a picture, it could be whatever you want. So let me define this for you though. Symbol for definition. This plus vector will be 0 plus 1 over the square root of 2. We've seen that before. That's what Hadamard does on the 0 state. And then the minus 1 will be similar, 0 minus 1 over the square root of 2. Okay? So it's good notation. It reminds us which one has the plus sign and which one has the minus sign. So take a minute to yourself and see if you could write out the matrix for the same linear operator in this different basis, the plus minus basis.